In this question, we need to create a couple polynomials using these zeros, and that polynomial has to be in standard form. So in part A, we're given three zeros, -5, 0, and 3. So I'm going to write these down here. And to get the standard form of this polynomial, I have to first write it in factored form. And to get the factors, I'm going to set each one of these three equations equal to 0. To do that, to the first one, I want to add 5 here. That will give me 0 on the right side. I have to add 5 to the left side to keep it balanced. So I'm left with x plus 5, and that's going to be the factor, and it's set equal to 0. Now for this one, x equals 0, well, that's already set equal to 0, so x is going to be another factor. And then we're going to do it to this one as well. I subtracted 3 from both sides, and then I'm left with x minus 3 as a factor. So I'll have y equals, and then I put all these factors down next to each other. So x plus 5 times x, and then times x minus 3. And that's going to be factored form. I need to distribute these out to get standard form. So first I'm going to take x and multiply it by this x. So that's going to be x squared. And then 5 times x, that's going to be 5x. And then I'll just bring down x minus 3. So I have x squared plus 5x times x minus 3. Now I'm going to continue multiplying this out, and that involves taking x squared and multiplying it by this x. So now I'm left with x cubed. X squared times -3 will be -3x squared. And then I take 5x and multiply it by that x, so I'm left with 5x squared, and then 5x times this -3, and I'm left with -15x. Now I'm going to just combine like terms, so I have y equals, y cubed is my only cubed term, so I just write, I'm sorry, that was x cubed, so that's going to be my only x cubed term, and then -3 plus 5 is going to be a positive 2, and that's my x squared term. And then at the end we're left with minus 15x. So this is going to be the polynomial that represents the three zeros right here. Part B, we're going to use the same process, except we have this fraction here, so that makes it a little bit harder. But I'm going to start off by writing all three of my zeros out, and I want to come up with my factors that match up with these zeros. So to do that, I have to set each one of them equal to 0. So I'm going to add 6/5 to this to get 0. Means I add 6/5 to this left side. So I'm left with x plus 6/5 equals 0. And we never want to have fractions with our factors. So to get rid of this 5 in the denominator, what I'll do is just multiply this entire equation by 5. So 5 times x will give me 5x, and then 5 times 6 is 30, and then it's being divided by 5 still, so 30 divided by 5 is 6. So I'm left with just that 6. So plus 6 equals 0. So this is going to be my factor here. I do the same steps with x equals 1 and x equals 2. So here I took away 1 from both sides, and then I was left with x minus 1 is one of the factors, and for this one I took away 2 from both sides to get it equal to 0, and I'm left with x minus 2 as a factor. Now I have to write all these factors next to each other, and it's going to be set equal to y. So let's see, we have 5x plus 6 is a factor, x minus 1 is a factor, and x minus 2 is a factor. And now I'm going to distribute everything. So 5x times x is 5x squared, and then 5x times minus 1 is going to be minus 5x. And then we take 6 and multiply it by this x. We're going to get 6x, and then 6 times minus 1 is -6. And then I just bring down this binomial, x minus 2, and now all these are grouped together, so I have to combine these like terms. 5x squared is the only quadratic term here, so I just bring it down. And then for my linear terms here, x and x, I have minus 5, and then plus 6. So if I add those together, I'm left with just a plus 1x, and then I bring down the constant, which is minus 6, along with this binomial at the end. And now the last thing I have to do is distribute all this. So I take 5x squared and multiply by x. That gives me 5x cubed. And then I move on to x, multiply that by the x. So that's going to give me x squared. And then minus 6 times this x, and I'm left with minus 6x. Now I have to multiply everything by this minus 2. So 5x squared minus 2 is going to be minus 10x squared. And then x times minus 2 is going to be minus 2x. And then negative 6 times negative 2 is going to be a plus 12. And my last step will be combining all these like terms. So this is my only cubed term, so I'll have 5x cubed. And then we have a quadratic here and here. So this invisible 1 minus 10 is going to be minus 9x squared. And then we have an x term here and here, so negative 6 minus 2 is going to be negative 8x. And then lastly we have our constant, which was just a positive 12, and that's our final answer. So back to what we did to create a polynomial in standard form. We took our zeros, found our factors, and then distributed out those factors, and we could get our polynomial.